Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is w.i.t.c.h.aholic. On this channel, I talk about a lot of things, mainly my fandoms like Witch. So today, because the new Cinderella movie came out, I wanted to talk about using fairy tales, in this case Cinderella, to help you write your book. Because no one likes reboots of fairy tales in movies, because they're really like the same. But when it comes to writing books based on fairy tales, authors are much more creative. And if you're like me and fan fiction is so easy to write because you have the characters and things already set for you, then and you want to write a book, but it's hard. Um, Writing your own twist on a fairy tale could help you. In fact, I might actually do that, even though I'm thinking of writing a book on a different concept. Maybe I'll try my own twist on a fairy tale. So I want to do Cinderella because that's what the latest movie is about, but I think I'll have videos on other fairy tales. Please tell me if that's what you want to watch. I think I'll have some other videos about like ideas for writing. So first is that Cinderella is one of those tales that have been told in so many other countries. And usually when we think of Cinderella, we think of like the Disney version, which is based on the French version by Charles. He's French, so even though his last name is Perrault, I think it's pronounced Perrault. I'm not sure. But there are so many other different versions you could be inspired from. You can also have your own twists. So here I'm just reading the summary of some I found on Wikipedia. Of course, you could look up, again, you could do a Google search to get more stories. Look in your library. So first I have to say, speaking about the French version, which is where we have the glass slipper, some people think that it was a mistranslation and he really meant it to be made out of squirrel fur, but the words fur, and glass were very similar. It could be. You could, to make your story interesting, you could make it be out of fur or something else. In fact, in the German one from the Brothers Grimm, they were made out of gold. Speaking about the Grimm Brothers version, in that version, after Cinderella's mother died and her father went to go on a business trip, he asked his daughter and stepdaughters what they wanted. Cinderella asked for the first twig that knocked off his hat. So he got her the twig, and she planted it on her mother's grave, and she watered it with her tears. So it eventually grew into a tree. And whenever she would pray under the tree, a white bird would bring her what she wished for. And that's how she got her clothes for the ball. In the Chinese version, Cinderella, or Ye Jian, I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, but it's spelled, that's how it looks like to me, Ye Jian. So she was the daughter of the local chief, and after her mother died, she was in the care of her father's second wife. And in this version, after her mother died, she was reincarnated as a fish. So her daughter befriended her. Now her stepmother and sister found out and killed the fish, but the bones were magical. And that's how she got the clothes for the ball, from these magic fish bones. In the Vietnamese version, it's similar, except after marrying the king, her stepmother actually killed her, and she, Cinderella, which in the Vietnamese version is Tam, I think. It has like I don't know if it's pronounced Tam because there is like a thing over the A, so it's probably pronounced differently, but I'll call her Tam. So in the Vietnamese version, after marrying the king, Tam's stepmother actually kills her, but she becomes reincarnated, first as a bird, then as a loom, then as a golden apple. And then she eventually, I think, turns to herself and lives happily ever after. In the Greek version, a bird carried the Cinderella sandal and it fell into the lap of a pharaoh, and he wanted to find out who the sandal belonged to, and the Greek Cinderella eventually married the pharaoh. And these are just some. There's a lot more, and again, you could put your own versions. So now I want to talk about just like my ideas for it to give it a twist. One is, why not have be gender bent with a boy abused by his stepfather and stepbrothers? You know that, and then the princess has a ball to find a husband. You know, that's interesting. But again, if you want to keep it with a princess, why not just change the name? Um, for example, she's called Cinderella because she got dirty because from the ashes. So why not just have ash something or suit something or dust something because she got covered in dust or whatever. And usually her name is Ella, but why not just change it to Ellen or Elaine or something completely different, right? Especially if you're having like your own version, you could like have your own twist on the name. Now, another thing to consider is why her stepmother and sisters hated her so much. Like, why? It just doesn't make sense, really. So, in another Cinderella story featuring Selena Gomez, they had a very good reason, and that's because Selena's character, Mary, her mother was a backup dancer for Dominique, who's a pop star. And so when Mary's mother died, Dominique took her in. And so she did resent it. Of course, there's a question why she took her in. But anyway, she took her in and she did have some resentment. So, yes, a very good way for explaining this resentment is because the relatives or whomever were forced to take in Cinderella after her parents' death. For an added twist, you could have that Cinderella's parents died when she was a teenager or close to one, and her parents were wealthy, so she didn't have to do work. And after being taken in by poorer relatives who needed her to help around the house, she perceived that as being mean and being the wicked stepmother or whatever. Now, for like the fairy godmother, again, an interesting twist is to have a fairy godfather or have, anyone else really fulfill that role. Also, again, if you're doing like with the magic, it'll be very interesting to explain again, like how fairy godparents work. Because surely Cinderella isn't the only one with a fairy godmother, right? that would be like a very interesting subplot explaining that who gets the fairy godmother or whatever, and why she only waited now until the ball. Speaking about the ball, I always thought it was kind of strange that all the girls in the kingdom were invited. Like, wouldn't royalty only invite other royalty and like higher ranking nobility? Though again, the kingdom is so small that they could fit that they could go to all the houses to try the slipper on. So maybe because it's a very small kingdom, they don't have, a lot of nobility. So to find the prince of bride, they need to invite the peasant girls. You know, if you could like have a reason why, like a ball specifically, and why inviting the peasants, that'd be interesting. Also, again, in a lot of the stories, the ball was over 2 days or 3 days, right? You could have like your own version of however many days you want. Also, why have a ball, right? Why not just have like a different kind of event or something? That would be interesting. I'm trying to think of a good one. Like, I guess like a competition, kind of like maybe he's a prince who is very into the outdoors, so he wants a wife who could keep up with him on hunting trips and stuff, you know, because, he wants to share that love of hunting or whatever with his wife or something, you know, anything. Though, whatever you do, it also, never made sense to me why the prince just falls in love with Cinderella. Just like that. Like, out of all the girls at the ball, like, I mean, I guess nowadays you could also, there can be potentially love at first sight, but like, if a story is more like in reality, like, even if it's has magic, but it's not like a fairy tale, so it's more in reality, like, the whole falling in love at first sight doesn't really make sense. So, a good way to have a twist to your story is to explain, like, why. Maybe, and again, feel free to use this and all other ideas. Maybe Cinderella, had some magic of her own and was just so desperate to go to the ball, she put a spell on herself that the prince would fall in love with her. Also, because of her magic, maybe that's how she got the dress or whatever. Or maybe the stepmother wasn't evil, but maybe, there was actually a plot to that Cinderella's family cooked up to make the prince fall in love with her. And, hundreds of years later, it just got turned into this story because for propaganda reasons to make, the royal family look better or something. When it comes to magic, there's so many interesting things you could do. Um, Thinking for, like propaganda. Yeah, I guess, yeah, if there's a plot cooked up, yeah, then I guess if it's found out, then they'd probably make it like a whole different story, right? And right, if you're having like a shared universe with other fairy tales. You could have like an inside joke about all these princes falling in love with peasant girls and stuff. you know like maybe there's a reason for that, for so there's a lot you can do with the fairy tales. And of course you could have it take place in the modern day without magic, but then where's the fun in that? What's the point of having a Cinderella story without the magic? Also, in a lot of fairy tales, also she didn't have slippers, but she had an anklet or a ring or a bracelet. So you could also do something like that. Anyway, I think that's all for today. I'd love to know if this helped you. And again, I'm thinking of trying to write my own twist in a fairy tale. Not sure what yet. Of course, if it goes well, I'll make a video about that. I'll probably have another video this week, but I'll probably at least have one video this week and probably one next week. But then there's the holidays, so I'm not sure of my schedule. Anyway, love to hear your comments on this and if it helped you, and I'll see you later.